We all think we know what insulin does, right? It's the hormone that's supposed to lower your blood sugar. But what if the very thing that's supposed to be the solution actually becomes the problem? For millions of people, there's this really dangerous paradox playing out inside their bodies, where the hormone meant to help is somehow unbelievably making things worse. Today, we're going to unpack the huge mystery of insulin resistance. And yeah, this question right here on the screen really gets to the heart of it. What on earth happens when the cure starts acting like the cause? Well, that is the insulin paradox. So here's the paradox in a nutshell. Insulin's job is simple: lower blood sugar. But in type 2 diabetes, the body is often cranking out tons and tons of insulin, and yet blood sugar stays dangerously high. It's this bizarre biological situation where more is actually less. And this slide just lays it out so clearly. On the left, you see how it should work. More insulin, it's like a key, should mean more glucose gets into our cells. Simple. But on the right, you see the reality of insulin resistance. The body is flooded with more insulin, more keys, but somehow the door to the cell gets harder to open. The system is literally fighting itself. I mean, it just seems to defy all logic, right? How is this even possible? Well, to solve this mystery, we've got to go deep inside the cell and figure out exactly where this communication is breaking down. So let's start with how it's all supposed to work in the first place. You know, in a healthy body, this whole process is incredibly elegant and efficient. It's kind of like a perfect cellular handshake. So let's walk through that ideal scenario first, just so we have a clear picture of what good actually looks like. Okay, so check this out. First, an insulin molecule shows up and binds to its special receptor on the outside of a cell. That's the handshake. This simple action triggers this incredible chain reaction of signals inside the cell. And the most important thing that happens is that a special protein, this glucose transporter called GLUT4, gets the call to action. It moves up to the cell surface and basically opens the door, letting all that glucose from your last meal come rushing in from the bloodstream. It's smooth, it's effective, it's beautiful. All right, so that's the ideal. But what happens when that signal breaks down? This is where the whole problem starts, and it all begins with a constant, relentless flood of insulin that kicks off this nasty, vicious cycle. So what's causing this flood of insulin? Well, honestly, it's a laundry list of modern lifestyle factors. Things like chronic overnutrition, eating too much, too often, especially refined carbs. These frequent meals that spike insulin all day long. And then there's obesity, particularly that dangerous visceral fat around the organs, and of course, a sedentary lifestyle. All of this forces the pancreas to work overtime, keeping insulin levels chronically, dangerously high. Now, this is my favorite analogy from all the source material because it just makes everything click. Imagine someone is just shouting at you nonstop. What do? Eventually, you're going to turn down the volume, right? Well, our cells do the exact same thing to protect themselves from the constant shouting of all that high insulin. And as you can see here, our cells have two main tricks up their sleeve to lower the volume. First, they literally pull the insulin receptors off their surface. They just remove them. That's called downregulation. Fewer receptors means less signal can get through. But second, even for the receptors that are still there, the message inside gets totally scrambled. It's kind of like having a really bad phone connection. You know, the call connects, but you can't understand a single word that's being said. And if we peek under the hood at the actual chemistry, it's pretty fascinating. For the command, yes, let glucose in, to work, the right chemical switch has to be flipped. As you can see on the slide, that's the tyrosine signal. Think of it as the on switch. But in a state of resistance, the wrong switch gets flipped, the serine signal. That's the off switch. It just completely jams the machinery. So who are these culprits? These little molecular troublemakers that are scrambling the signal? Well, it's a whole mob. You've got free fatty acids that are spilling out of overstuffed fat tissue. You have inflammatory markers that tell the body it's under stress. And then you have these toxic byproducts of fat metabolism, things like ceramides and DAGs. All of these molecules get in there and directly mess with the cell's internal wiring. And this failure isn't just happening in one place. Oh no. It creates this disastrous domino effect all across your body. Your muscles, which are supposed to be the biggest users of glucose, they just stop taking it in. Your liver, which should shut down sugar production when insulin is high, it totally misses the signal and keeps pumping out even more glucose into your blood.
And then your fat tissue. It becomes resistant to and starts leaking out those signal-scrambling free fatty acids, which, you guessed it, makes the whole problem even worse. It is a true perfect storm.
But, okay, here's where the story takes a massive twist. What if this entire breakdown isn't a breakdown at all? What if this is actually an ancient, incredibly sophisticated survival program that's just running in the completely wrong environment? This might not be a bug in our system. It might actually be a feature.
This slide really tells the whole story. For pretty much all of human history, the number one threat to our survival was starvation. So our bodies evolved this brilliant response, insulin resistance, to help us survive lean times. But fast forward to today, we live in a world of constant overnutrition. And that same survival program, it's become a major problem. It's a classic evolutionary mismatch.
So what was this program for, originally? Well, it did two incredibly clever things. First, during a famine, it would make the muscles and fat resistant to taking up glucose, saving that precious fuel for the most important organ of all, the brain. And second, it protected our cells from the damage of being forced-fed energy when they were already full. It was, at its core, a self-preservation mechanism. Okay, so if the problem is just an ancient program running in a modern world, then the solution is actually pretty logical, isn't it? We need to change the inputs. We have to start sending signals to our body that actually align with our ancient biology. We basically have to reboot the whole system. And here are the most powerful ways we know of to do that. Weight loss is huge because it directly lowers the amount of insulin your body even needs to produce. Intermittent fasting gives your cell receptors a much-needed break from that constant shouting, allowing them to reset and become sensitive again. And then there's exercise. Well, exercise has a kind of superpower.
Now, what's so amazing about exercise is this. It can get glucose into your muscle cells through a completely separate backdoor pathway that doesn't even need insulin signaling to work. It's a total workaround. So even when the main door is jammed shut by resistance, exercise basically opens up a secret passage, forcefully improving your body's ability to handle sugar. It's incredible.
And that brings us to the final, absolutely crucial takeaway. If you remember one single thing from all of this, let it be this sentence. Insulin resistance is not a failure of insulin. It is a logical, protective, and even healthy response of your cells to an environment of chronic insulin excess. Your body isn't broken, it's trying to protect you. So that solves our paradox, but it leaves us with one last, pretty big question to think about, doesn't it? If our bodies are really this smart, if they are constantly adapting to protect us from the signals we're sending them, what other messages are we sending through our daily choices, and how else might our bodies be trying to protect us?